at the Basement Studio, and today we have a fun one. We are going to talk about a new EQ and console emulation from Sonimus. They got in touch with me and asked if I'd like to review it. I said absolutely. And let me preface it by saying this is not a paid sponsorship or anything like that. They did send me an NFR for full disclosure, but they do not see this review in advance. They have no influence on what's going in this. I just send it to them when I am done, and it's uploaded and posted. So without further ado, we're going to jump right into it. This is the API, kind of their version of the Vision channel strip, if you will, because it's got the 215L preamp emulation, 212L filters, and basically a 550B EQ section as well. So it's very similar to like the UAD Vision channel strip, which I'm also using for my voiceover here right now. So I'm very familiar with this sound, and I love this sound. I track all my drums through it on my Apollo. It's my favorite sound for drums, and I use it a lot for things like electric guitar, things that have that really beautiful mid-range push that API can give them. So that's why I wanted to put this to the test to see if it would do it. And how we're going to go over this is basically, I have a session here I've already mixed, but I committed everything, and I took all the EQ and stuff off the drums, essentially. And then as an experiment, I left my EQ how I had set on the instruments, but used only the preamp section to drive it in various ways, whether it's through their line emulation or mic emulation on it. Also did the same thing on the drums, because this is the key for me with API. If they're going to model the actual drive of the console and that sound, that's what I'm very familiar with tracking on API consoles here in Nashville that I love, particularly for drums. And that's what I want to focus in on. So we'll just do a quick lay of the land on the plugin itself, because it's very simple. It's laid out simply. That's what I love. You can get right to the point with it. You can have, and I like the fact that they made this modular. You can have up to 16 modules. It starts out basically like your typical channel strip. It's got the 4 bands of basically a 550B and then your preamp and filter section. And you can add more here if you want, and including these cool free bands that they have that you can basically make the frequencies sweepable and add them wherever you want in the rotation. And also on any of these, if you use the control function on your keyboard, you can have variable gain instead of step gain like an API. So very quick, simple layout, lay of the land. We don't have to go super deep into this because most of us have all tinkered with API, EQ, and console emulation plugins, so we know exactly what this is doing. The big thing is we want to get right into the sound. And again, like I said, how I treated this was drums, I re-EQ'd, took those off, used the console emulation, and then on the instruments only, I'm only driving to varying degrees on them using the console function, because to me, this is the shining star of this. The EQ sounds great, but they have really nailed this console sound. And without further ado, I'm going to run a course, and I'll kind of do like 2 bars with it bypassed, 2 bars in, that kind of thing. Play it a couple times, and we'll go from there. And that right there, after I got everything dialed in the way I wanted, and let me also preface this with, I made sure to volume match everything. And also when I instantiate a plugin new and I test it, I always listen to see if they have manipulated the volume or the sound in any way. I'll put whatever particular console or EQ or whatever it is across every instrument channel or any audio channel. And I will play back a chorus, whatever, and bring it in and out in default settings to see if it is manipulating the sound in any way, in a weird way where it's rising, bringing the volume up a lot, anything like that where they're trying to trick your ear. I can't stand that stuff. And that's the first thing I did with this. They didn't do that because it's very misleading, and I don't like when companies do that. There's several out there that do that. They didn't do that. And then the next thing is, after I'd made all of my changes, especially when you're driving console and stuff, because naturally compresses transients and things like that and brings up ambience and stuff in, especially in drums and like room mics and overheads, which is what I love about it because it sounds very natural. It controls it very well. And when they do the emulation right of whatever the console is, if you like that sound, they've done this here with this, where it brings out, APIs are known for that upper mid-range, 2 to 4K range, where it just sounds beautiful, just naturally through the console, through how, with their op amps and, you know, all the stuff that's going on under the hood of the console when it's driven right, adds this sparkle in the mid-range that's just beautiful. It's done this on the drums, and that's why I chose a country mix, because like with steel and Telecasters and things like that, it's going to expose that mid-range immediately, whether they nailed it or not. And I feel they've done a really, really good job here. It sounds great. The EQ sounds good. And, you know, you might say, you know, why are you excited about another API plugin? It's just another emulation. Well, not everyone gets the emulation right. And I particularly love this sound of actual API console and EQ, especially on drums and electric guitars and things like that. So that's why I'm pumped about this. And to argue the fact that it's just another emulation, you know, when we bring it up here, you've got, again, you can physically reorder this. Say you want to pull some low mids out before you boost, whatever you want to do, you now have the freedom to do that you can't do on the hardware, along with bringing up, you know, these free bands where you have, you know, free control over it instead of just stepped where you're committed to just those frequencies. And there's something to be said for that too as well. But it's expanding and bringing you features that you couldn't have in the hardware, or they don't make in the hardware, I should say. It's not that you can't have it. They just don't make it in the hardware. And, you know, so they're taking it a step further. And also, I forgot to mention as well, you can enable oversampling up to 16x, and the oversampling definitely works. I've checked it. You know, I don't like to pull up Plugin Doctor and all that because you don't want to get too forensic with it at the end of the day, because a lot of people rely too much on the forensics and not the actual sound. There's validity to all of that, but the oversampling does work, unlike some plugin companies that release stuff that have multiple ones and they only do like 2x waves. Sorry, a little salty about that, but there's several of their plugins they've released, which I love, and they always screw up the oversampling somehow. I don't understand how, but it just happens. But at the end of the day, man, I'm really digging the way this thing sounds. I really don't have anything negative to say about it because, I mean, it's CPU friendly, the oversampling's good, the EQ's good, and I'm in love with this console drive because it's doing exactly what I want for the API sound, specifically the API sound. It hasn't crashed on me yet, you know, so that's a good thing. I'm really, really digging it. There's really no downside to this for me because I'm always looking for a good API EQ, and especially if they add the console emulation, because that's big for me. I've been a huge user, and I still am to this day, of the UAD, and I still track through that since I'm running all Apollos in my studio. But when it comes to mix down, this is going to be a serious contender for me when it comes to mixing. I'm really, 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 really digging the way this sounds. So you should go to Sonimus and check out a demo if you're looking for that API sound with the console emulation as well.